right out of the gate, we've got Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, who had on paper looked like it was going to be an outstanding football game, and maybe Vineland doesn't feel that way on this Saturday morning. How you doing, Mike?
Pretty good, Pete. Pretty good. Vineland feels like it's deja vu all over again after last night, probably.
Yeah, and you know what? Eventually they may be able to climb the mountain and beat that team. But yes, the history between those two, and third time that the Fighting Clan has lost to Williamstown. I mean, they're both talented. It's not like you don't think Vineland is going to be there at the end. It's just, what was that, week 0? We're not even to week 1 yet.
Yeah, the third time they've lost to Williamstown, the defending South Jersey Group 5 champion, in the last calendar year, and all 3 games have unfolded the same way. The scores, I think, were 28-7, 24-7, and last night 28-7. And in watching the game last night, I wouldn't say Williamstown was 3 to 4 touchdowns better than Vineland. It's just a play here, a play there, that gives Williamstown some separation. So I think you saw a Vineland football team that anybody that was there last night agreed is going to win a lot of football games this year, has a lot of talent, but last night just ran into the same old story against Williamstown.
Did the weather play a factor at all in any way, in your mind?
Nah, the weather wasn't a factor at all. I mean, it was gray, it was drizzly, it was windy, but I don't think it played a factor at all. You know, Vineland with a couple of key penalties helped Williamstown drives. And Vineland just, Williamstown's got a great defense. They returned 10 starters. We have them number 4 in our Press Elite 11. Aaron Lewis, big defensive lineman, headed to the University of Michigan. Vineland just had trouble sustaining offense, just as they did in the 2 games last year. Trouble sustaining offense, trouble making that key play to sustain that drive, pick up that key first down and keep going. And Williamstown makes a couple of big plays. They're able to sustain some offense, and then they win the game 28-7.
Did you happen to see Mike Franco out there last night?
You know, I was in the booth. We had the early deadline. The weather's not the greatest. I'm an old guy now, so I was not on the sidelines. I was on the booth, so I probably missed Mike, and I'm sure the next time I see him, he'll chide me for not being out in the element.
Well, here's a little known piece of trivia. Okay, so last year in this game, right? This was I think it was this game or this week.
Right. Yeah, they opened up the season last year, this week at Vineland last year, and then played in the Group 5 playoffs in November.
And did they have weather that affected that one?
Possibly on one of those games. I'm not sure.
Right. Or all I know is this. I talked to Mike Franco yesterday because you realize that last night was the first time I wasn't on a high school sideline somewhere in South Jersey or anywhere for that matter, Nebraska or whatever, in like 25 years.
What'd you do with yourself?
It was awesome.
Really?
We were watching Hard Knocks. We had dinner. We were watching Hard Knocks. I fell asleep in the recliner, and then I went upstairs and watched at least an inning of the Phillies to then fall back asleep and have to, I didn't have to watch any of the debacle as your Mets won in a walk-off win.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I often think of, I consider myself lucky at so many Friday nights in the fall. My life's based around, what football game you're going to, where am I going, stuff like that. So I don't know what I'd do with myself if it wasn't for Friday night football.
Yeah, it felt weird, but then again, it also felt good. Mike McGarry is our guest from the Press of Atlantic City. So let's get into some of the other South Jersey teams that played last night. And, of course, the headline, as it should have been, is that Leo Hamlet and Atlantic City had a comeback win over EHT, and that's their first win since the Thanksgiving game in 2017.
Yeah, great win for the Atlantic City Vikings. I'm following that game on Twitter from Williamstown. And, of course, Atlantic City goes 0-10 last year. And I believe they fumbled on maybe their first possession, maybe even their first play from scrimmage. They fumble, and EHT turns that into a 7-0 score. And you just think to yourself, oh, wow, here goes Atlantic City again. But, I've been around Atlantic City athletes for, 25-plus years, and I don't think there's a group of athletes that are more resilient than the kids that, come out of that city or the kids that go to that high school. They get a great game from quarterback Corey Yeoman. I think they scored twice in 60 seconds or 62 seconds in the fourth quarter. and they get a big win over EHT last night. Now they're 1-0, and there's nothing better than being 1-0, Pete, and they go off to play Vineland next Friday night in Vineland in a big game between two South Jersey Group 5 schools, traditional Cape Atlantic League schools. So a great win for Leo Hamlet, a great game by Corey Yeoman at quarterback, and Jolene Fredericks, a first-time player, makes some big plays, big touchdown catch for him too. So great win for Atlantic City.
Yeah, no doubt. And Coach Hamlet's quote after the game to your colleague Patrick Moranin was that, hey, the boys did this. Like, the 10 losses last year, that was on me. This was them that came together tonight. I thought that was a good quote.
Yeah, and that's, good for Leo. He gives some credit to the kids, but let's give credit to Leo, too. It's not the easiest place to coach Atlantic City to be 0-10. It's not easy to coach anywhere when you're 0-10. And to get a big win for him, his first career victory as a head coach, probably meant an awful lot to him last night. So congratulations to Atlantic City.
Meanwhile, by the way, I tweeted in the Saturday Twitter question is, what do you think the Eagles' record will be? And if you have them in the postseason, where does that ride end? And the first person to respond to my Twitter question was Dave Weinberg from your colleague Dave Weinberg. So I thought that was appropriate. He said 11-5 NFC Championship game, but he also was working last night covering Ocean City and Lower Cape May. And boy, when you get into his story and you see the efficiency that the Ocean City offense had, it's almost, like if you were drawing it up, they needed just 12 plays to score touchdowns on their first 5 possessions. That's an offensive coordinator and head coach's dream.
Yeah, hard to do better than that. And I know Ocean City, they have got a lot of expectations in Ocean City. They've got a lot of talented players. They brought back an excellent defense. They've got some talent in the skill positions. Joe Rapetti starts at quarterback last night, throws 2 touchdowns. They've got a lot of hopes of not only, making the playoffs, which they've done the past 2 seasons, but also possibly contending for a South Jersey Group 4 title. They got another big game last night out of a running back, Isaac Wilson, and they start the season off right with a 35-0 win over Lower Cape May. And now they'll play at Egg Harbor Township next week, or they'll host Egg Harbor Township next week. And, so Ocean City will try to get to 2-0, and Egg Harbor will try to bounce back from the disappointing defeat to Atlantic City last night. But a good start for an Ocean City team that kind of expects big things from itself this season, and they lived up to their own expectations last night.
Well, certainly there's big things and big expectations for mainland football. The Mustangs and Chuck Smith, they open up by shutting out Overbrook and pretty much got all their work done in the first half, it looked like, too. Got up 35-0 and just put the cruise control on. And what's the kid's name? Jabril Mace. Remember that name? Right.
He's the story of that game. The Summers Point kid, freshman running back, scores 4 touchdowns. Mainland beats Overbrook 35-0. In our newsletter that I do, I believe it gets emailed to you on Tuesday. We'll take a look at some other great freshman debuts at running back. 2 that come to mind are Kevin Sinclair of Ocean City, Jack Corcoran of St. Joe had great freshman debuts. They both went on to outstanding careers. We'll see what Jabril Mace does going forward, but he's a guy. There was some buzz about him in mainland camp. Chuck Smith, gave him, said he's a player to watch in the preseason, and Jabril went out and showed it last night, 4 touchdowns in a 35-0 win over Overbrook, setting up another big game next Friday night. You got mainland at 1-0, going to play at Absegami, it'll be Absegami's season opener, but you have an Absegami team with the good sophomore Ray Weed at quarterback, an Absegami team that won 4 in a row to end last season. So you got, the freshman running back against the sophomore quarterback in a big division game next Friday night up in Galloway Township.
Hey, you're really good at this. You're not only recapping the week before, you're setting up the next week. I mean, whatever we're paying you, it's not enough. All right, so Jabril Mace. Oh, and by the way, his brother scored too. His older brother, Jaquan, ran a punt back 45 yards. Then you can have your brother feature on your Friday week little preview there, like, Dueling Brothers or something like that, right?
Exactly. We've got them all lined up, Pete, this time of year. You have to know what you're doing a couple days in advance.
No doubt. Let's see some other action that took place last night. I know that who else won last night? Hamilton, big 51-12 over Oakcrest. Not a lot of details out of that one, but Hamilton looks like they're loaded for bear again.
Yeah, Hamilton, a team that finished 3-7 last year, played a lot of sophomores. They get a big game last night from Jaden Abrams, their outstanding running back who ran for 1,600 yards. He scored 2 touchdowns. It's a Hamilton team, they made the Group 4 final a couple years ago, but they did it with an under 500 record. So you got a Hamilton team that's looking for their first winning season since 2015. Of course, the Blue Devils, they're a traditional power. They're a town that loves high school football. They get off to a great start last night, beating Oakcrest, so they're 1-0. They go, next 2 games are tough. Next 3 games are tough for Hamilton, so we'll know more about them the end of September. They play at Timber Creek, who's always excellent, at Shawnee, who's the defending South Jersey Group 4 champion, and then they host Holy Spirit, I believe, on the 27th.
Wow.
So the next 3 games, they'll tell us a lot about the Hamilton Blue Devils. So they got some momentum going into that stretch with the big win over Oakcrest last night.
Yeah, there is no Little Sisters of the Poor on the schedule in those next 3 games for sure. Mike McGarry's with us from the Press of Atlantic City as we recap high school football from Friday night and any other significant high school news that's coming out. Middle Township, there's Frankie Ridge, man. Frank Ridgetano, they open up 35-8 with a win over Cumberland Regional, and the name to remember there is Julian. It's not Gillian or Gillian's Wonderland or anything like that. It's Carl Julian, even though it starts with a G.
Yeah, he's one of those kids, linebacker and running back. I believe he's only a junior, but he's like one of those kids that seems like they're in high school for about 8 years, basically. That's because he's played since he's a freshman year, and he's all over the field. They get a nice win over Cumberland last night to go to 1-0, and they've got a chance to go 2-0 next week as they play at Cape May County rival Wildwood. So a chance for Middle Township to go to 2-0 next week and really start the season off right. And they're another team, 5-5 last year, a lot of playoff aspirations, brought back a lot of guys. They get started in the right direction last night also.
Since I mentioned that the crew at Barnegat Lighthouse was listening to the show, maybe we should mention that Barnegat had a rough start against Point Pleasant Borough. Since that's in the paper, right? We might as well cover all the scores.
Yeah, tough loss for Barnegat last night. A Barnegat team that's kind of really rebuilding. They lost a lot of the seniors off last year's team that was 7-3. And we're talking about Barnegat Light. You got Southern Regional that was supposed to play last night against Nottingham. They will play. That game was postponed because of the weather by the shore, the hurricane coming off the coast. So they postponed that game to today. And you've got Southern Regional opening up its season against Nottingham, and I believe at either noon or 1 o'clock in Manahawkin there. And, a Southern Regional team that coached by the great Chuck Donahue that always gets a lot of support up there in Ocean County.
Yeah, senior and junior. Of course, I follow junior on Twitter, so I see. I don't think senior tweets, but junior definitely does. All right.
Junior, of course, Chuck Donahue Jr., the athletic director at Southern also.
Yes, so Cedar Creek, that's where you're going to Cedar Creek in Salem today?
Right, I'm about to head down 295 South until I see, the Delaware Memorial Bridge. I'm going to make a left and end up at Salem High School. That's what I've been told. Cedar Creek 1-0 against Salem. Salem lost last week to Pleasantville. Cedar Creek comes off the win over Willingboro. Coach quarterback Louis Barrios threw for a touchdown, ran for a score last week. Get to see Malachi Melton, the defensive back and wide receiver who has committed to Purdue from Cedar Creek. Cedar Creek looks to go 2-0 against Salem, who, of course, reached the South Jersey Group 1 final last year and is a perennial power. So it should be a good game down there by the Delaware Memorial Bridge.